Okay, hi everyone. Good morning, good evening, hola. Um, it's been a while for a lot of us. It's a small group today, which is often the case for the first call. Um, and maybe some people are still on vacation as well. It's that time of the year. But nonetheless, we go into a reboot. We restart. I wonder how your last month has been during our break time. I don't know. For me, it just felt like the biggest month. Um, it was so expansive and restive because suddenly we're not traveling. Normally, we are in Europe, namely Turkey, this time of the year, doing another training, or we have just come from the European summer and there's usually either guests in Maya as well or so much construction. But the last month has been maybe the most restive I've had in the longest time that I could remember. So I want to check in with you. How was your month? Um, it was maybe a really huge digestion time. Some of you probably traveled as well, and I'd be interested in whether you had also been conducting work, what's been coming up, questions, insights, feelings, realizations. I think that's a really good way to start. And then maybe we can start to construct uh, from that, like from the plentitude of what is now to come in a third wave. Okay, so who would like to start? Val, that looks like a really beautiful space. Is that your home? Like, oh my God, it's like 360-degree.
I wish it was my home. I'm on my friend's boat in
Oh,
the
yeah.
in the Sea of Cortez,
I
and
thought
they
it
all
looked like a
went
boat.
to.
Oh my God.
It is phenomenal. It is phenomenal, and I was like, I need my tribe. You guys go do the sundown. I've been blessed to watch it, and now I didn't want to miss this opportunity to reconnect with all of you. I guess I start is okay. Bye.
Yeah, please.
So yeah, well, honestly, reconnecting in this kind of environment has been incredible. Like the elements of nature have been like the most intensive I've ever had in my life. Like every beautiful animal that can possibly pop out from anywhere has been in close encounter. So it has summed up to the energy of creation. I'm with Fanny Lemieux fixing and creating our upcoming training in Mexico. So we're super pumped up about that. It's happening November 14th to the 17th, and it's just been flowing beautifully. We've been holding space to create lives and Zooms and just creating a space to not interview, just get to know those people that are saying, this sounds like something I want to do. And things are flowing in a beautiful place, an hour and a half from Mexico. It's called Tequesquitengo, and it's right in the lagoon. So we're very excited, blessed, and eager for this time to come. And people are coming aboard. So that's the energy that we are nesting, and of course coming and continuing to learn from these calls. Oh, there's Fanny. Hi, love. And so yeah, we've been having a lot of fun. Fanny's being like brave and putting herself out there in Spanish and putting her videos, speaking some phrases here and there, and we just enjoy the process. I'll speak for myself. I've enjoyed the process of putting this together with her, and that's the share over here. As also, soon we'll start another little tour with my friend Fernanda to do inner dance in some cities of Mexico. As well, I'm soon to take certifications for Gong and Tibetan bowls. So that's the new baby coming on board. So lots of things are happening. Very grateful to hold the space with all of you. Thank you, Pai, for
Mm,
asking. And
mm,
greetings to everyone, especially Ituli, Christina, and
mm.
um, my biz partner, Fanny Lemieux. Thank you to everyone. I'll be quiet
Um,
so somebody else can share. I'm super pumped up and energized, as you can see.
We're so jealous, by the way, just where you're at. It's like, wow, look at that. You're just on the edge of everything. Wow. Mm. There's something about tight spaces as well around like really open ones. That's really interesting. I've been
It's
watching
like
so
the rocks.
yeah,
Do you
yeah,
see the
yeah. Oh
formations?
yeah. So there's the rocks, the water, and then you're right
Yeah.
there in the middle. It's pure mobility, yet stationary. It's like, wow, I want to experience that. Okay, who else would like to share? So good to hear from Mexico. Who else would like to stream in something from another? Yeah, Corinne, I think you're raising your hand.
Yes, I think I share because I've heard of Mexico and I understand that the colors of Mexico make you happy and can also make your soul, how do you say, heal a little bit of your soul. I just left Mexico. I was living there for 17 years and I now arrived in Austin, Texas. And for me, it was an overwhelming summer with a lot of ups and downs and more downs than ups. Um, my whole life crashed with this move. And I was like a nomad during a few weeks, but a nomad living at my parents' house, at my, well, family houses. I was never at home. And then I arrived here in Austin and I wasn't at my home. And a lot of things happened and everything was hard and everything was like a trial for me. If the universe, maybe the universe was trying to uh, to see if I would lose my center, and sometimes I did, and sometimes not. So it's still a process, but I'm also using it in order to, I wanted to slow down. So, I mean, it was not slow, the process, because we have plenty of things to do. But I'm now settling down since 2 weeks in my new home. And I try really to to ask me, do I really want to do that? Do I really want to do these activities? What do I want now? And I want to settle in and I want to take the time and I want to be alone and I want to be sad if I have to be sad. But I'm not, I'm okay. I'm sad, but I'm okay inside, you know, I know I'm okay. I know I'm fine. And a lot of things, I don't know, I have a horse which is still in Mexico, which I try to move also here, and I have a deep connection to her, and things are happening too, and I cannot bring her here for the time being, and it really moves me a lot. But I'm doing a lot of work of energy from the distance with her, and I'm confident. And I don't know why, but it's the first time for me that I picture myself with her here, even if I know now the facts and that it shouldn't happen. But yeah, it's a big mess. So, and in terms of energy work, I mean, I'm into it, but I'm not doing anything. I missed you guys, but it was necessary for me yeah, this break was necessary because I couldn't have done it. It's also overwhelming because I couldn't be in the last calls, and I feel that it's a lot of information that I have to catch up. But as I said, I try to slow down and take it one by one and do it on my schedule. And now I have no pressure because I'm in a new town. I don't have people asking me for sessions or whatever. And I try to be as much possible away from the social media and from my older colleagues. even if I'm grateful for what happens to them or what they're doing, but I try not to be that much in touch with what directions they are into, and trying to find my own direction. And yeah, that's a process. So I don't know where I'm going to and where I'm at, but I'm fine, I guess.
Thank you, Corinne. Yeah, it's a really interesting time of the year as well. It's in the middle of everything. And it's like a transition. I really like the idea of like a joyful sadness or a sad joy. There's something very powerful and melancholic and vibrant about allowing for what seems to be like a grieving process, which is a goodbye, which is probably like something hard to put into words for you at the moment, but I think this move between spaces, it speaks a lot. So yeah, I'm sure we resonate with where you're at. Thank you for verbalizing. All right. Who else would like to share? So nice to hear from people right now. What's your inner dance? What's your journey process like?
I resonate a lot with what Corinne just said about taking the pause and this summer being a time to just sort of detox from all of the noise and the social media and get really quiet. But at the same time, I've been holding sessions in person that have been very deep. And I just returned this week to starting to do online sessions again and incorporating my noise, which is amazing. And it just the depth of the journeys is incredible. And I feel like as my own sort of quiet inner process is kind of sort of culminating in some sort of loose understanding of all that we've been learning, and everything's just kind of rattling around and kind of coming together now in my brain. And as that's happening, I'm just finding myself just stepping away from any sort of attempt to control or push or give energy or transmit or any of that. All that's the old way of doing things. And I'm just there, and I'm just holding space. And really, it's not even me, it's just the space is just there. And as a result, just the depth of awakening that people are experiencing in this process is just beautiful and humbling. And so thank you for all of this that you've shared, and the community and all of the tools. I've only just tapped into a couple of them, but it's just everybody who was coming to my classes knows it's different. They can sense it. They're like, well, that's not what, it's totally new. And people who are still in the CAP world know it's different. So it's just, it's beautiful. So thank you.
I
What's
think
that?
it's she said it's cinema roll. I don't know what that is. It's like a dog with really long ears. This is Amaya. Okay.
Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful.
Okay. You want to go next, Marsha? Now that you've
Yeah,
sounded out
why
a bit.
not? Okay, so has been a very interesting summer. I had a few classes here, and then I took off to Brazil. I gave myself some time. I've been doing a lot of just health conscious integration. As I practice, I'm realizing that going back to my body has been very important, because during the process of studying and going through my spiritual evolution, I have the tendency to forget about my body and to nurture it well. Um, so I took a little break and I restructured things for myself. And I'm with you, Becca. I can relate to a lot of what you said. Um, I I'm experiencing now something really um, kind of strange because my classes were so they were going and they're packed and that was all about having people and then it wasn't anymore. It just I have to find in me the clarity and the peace to have less people, to have people who are more serious about this work, and it's bringing me to a lot of reflection, you know, of what it is this work and what it is that it is for everybody, but not everybody will be up to do the hard part, you know. And since we removed all that dopamine and all that craziness, I too had to restructure and because I like the dopamine, I like the craziness. That's why I got into it. and then and then I feel the withdrawals myself, but at the same time, I am substituting that for something much more powerful, much more deep, and much more meaningful. So yeah, I am taking my time and integrating. And I am so looking forward to have our intensive in November. I'm ready. So yeah, it has been great to be with family and to share things with my friends, my ex CAP facilitators. I made a decision also because I think that I've been one of the most outspoken person about my disassociation with CAP, and even then I thought I was being very clear. I still got a lot of invitations from people to come to sessions, and I went to one session to a new facilitator that I didn't know was using the logo, and I went, and I really didn't feel the same energy that I'm feeling with inner dance. And I thought would be because obviously wasn't inner dance. But I realized that it's more than that. I think energetically, when we make a cut, we feel it. And then you take that position. This time off has been very important for me to gain clarity to what I don't want to at all associate with, and the things that I'm open, so I can clear this space and be ready to experience new things without that attachment to the old. So it has been a process of letting go, as well as Becca said, and have the definition of this is me before this is me after this, and it has been awesome, you know, and definitely introspective. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's a lot there.
Hello.
Wow. Thank you. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I'm loving these sharings. Anyone else who'd like to share? These are all resonating with definitely what's coming up. Um, okay. Um, I think maybe we can take our time. We could just keep this conversational. Maybe I could just use this as an opportunity to look at the third wave. It's quite good to look back and reflect on where we have been and where we are at now. I think it's also now a powerful time to move forward. I think from moving from summer to autumn or fall, um, something ironically quickens in a way that we would expect in summer, things should be quickening, but something slows down. So I'm really happy to hear these reflections about slowing down, because summer is a metaphor. So when we, for example, say the words we're going through a winter in our life, that sort of means something. But in the process of consciousness raising or vibrating, there's something more potent in the winter time, that happens inside. The summer is more like what's happening externally somehow in like a cultural way. It interacts with the climate. Maybe that's when we start releasing what had been stored and pent up. And yet we go within, and so I think this is a really good time to look at things uh, in transition. All right, so there's been a lot, there's still quite a bit, and we're going to enter into more organized frames in the coming weeks, in the coming months. Hopefully, this paves the way for a lot of, like a lot more awareness coming in the long term, that you can really take your time, that this could be really like a lifelong study process, that you are able to understand the real underpinnings of what inner dance truly has to offer, that's beyond just the modality or the activity or maybe even the event. What does it mean that this is partly like a lifestyle, a way of living, but much, much deeper? What does it mean that this is a philosophy? I think to be able to philosophize means really the ultimate slowness, like when you're triggered by life, when there are these everyday things happening, to access your philosopher, your inner philosopher, which is, what is that even? Like the ability to ask the essential questions, what is the meaning of all this? Why am I here? What is this all about? I mean, for me, the actual goal is to be able to do that no matter what is happening. That is the training. That is what we are seeking to hold. The experience or the journey, the session ought to give a glimpse of what it's like to begin to hold that much information through our oldness, our ability to navigate across time and space. But for me, the hard work, the real work, when they say, are you really doing the work? Like, who's doing the work? Are we doing the work, or are we bypassing? Are we jumping over? It has to be applicable. It has to be practical. And what we are now necessitating is our true age. We're coming of age, and it's the age of the earth. It's the age of the species. It's the age of all your incarnations. We seek to hold time in its true essence, which is actually space. So we're gonna open what it means to hold it. I mean, when people give feedback after the journey, and then they try to explain where they've been, try to describe what that space is. For me, there are probably two words that contain it the most, and one word would be like nothing. Sometimes people utter that, like I saw it. It's like I was in the nothing. And when you hear the word nothing, it sounds like it's nothing. But there's a gravity, there's a gravitas, there's a sense of density or depth when they mention that we know they mean something that's not nothing. So then when the other word is uttered, which is like everything, like I saw everything. I was everything. I was everywhere all at once. We somehow can relate to that as well. Like there's this dimension where everything is there. So I think this transition phase that a lot of us are going through, there are many questions, and those questions are related to our belief structures. What do we know now? And what are we uncovering that would become a future knowing? I think if we were to simplify that, because that can be quite multifaceted, there's a diversity in all these questions that are coming up beyond the simple ones would be, what is it about the music? What does it mean to hold a space, to be a space holder, to be in integrity? What does it mean to hold this power and then this insight? I mean, underneath all that, it has to start with the one, like with you. It has to be real in that sense. So that is maybe the question into itself, like what is real right now? What is actually reality? Another question that comes up adjacent would be, what is true? What is actually the nature of truth? Because when we speak about, okay, there's this grouping, there's this organization, there's this community, and then there's this brand. What people are looking for when it's externalized or projected like that is like, what do I believe in? Like, give me something constant, stable to believe in. And that could be, at some point, like believe in someone else, believe in that person, believe in this energy. So there is something in the inner dance that does hold its own. There are truth conditions within inner dance. Sometimes it could be clear, sometimes it could just be like an intuition. And when we learn to verbalize things, it can become explicit. Um, so yeah, like the space between nothing and everything does tend to come up in the process. But in between nothing and everything, there is somehow a structure. So so it depends on all of us. What would be the ability to hold the stable point that we can more or less map out all of it, and still yet be able to discover like a whole bunch of somethings, like each of the somethings are valuable or sacred probably, but then how to hold the like the entirety of it all would be this would allow you to be constant, so that no matter what you're doing, you could be talking to your mom, you could be taking care of your cat, your dog, you could be, with your horse, you could be with your boss. You don't lose it, like what you don't lose it with somehow a sense of what is the it, like to begin with. Okay. So because I've been in this for a long time, beyond the 18 years I've been holding this space. Prior to that, my mind has already been exploding in terms of a paradigm of world. How was I seeing the nature of reality that would lead to my own inner dance? The whole practice of inner dance had to have come from that. The whole experience of inner dance had to come from that. And a lot of you, by listening to you, I can feel the part of you that's heading there, the structure of oneness, of unity, of everything is interconnected. Okay, like somehow you're designing your world. You're like an architect or an interior designer, and it's got to be in the terms that you would trust, that would also need to connect with everything outside that is also an like aspects of you. They are aspects, they are parts of you. Only that you would trust. I think nothing else would satisfy those who go so deep. The the grounding needs to be commensurate. It needs to match that which already you know from a heart experience, like or an intuition. This by no means is an easy task. So a lot of what you guys shared actually assists the process. Let's go into maybe the screen just to uh okay, so the trainers are going to be constructing the experience page once more for this stage. We didn't really have I think it's May to, is it July? We didn't have so much of an experiential element. The other facilitators have yet to add their own contributions. So I've at least put up what I could, the things that I have been constructing in the last month or so. And often this helps me to receive certain feedbacks on what is happening in the inner space, because we are here to talk to the universe. So at least the feedbacks that come from the universe inside people could mean a lot. And maybe when you are constructing your own playlists, there could be a lot there. So what resonated with me, I only read today, actually. I wasn't able to read it because it was in Spanish. So I had to translate that. So here I have the translation. So, okay, so into languages, we can just scroll. I think she's talking about nothing and everything here. But this is where I want to go to, the mandala. I think is what our third wave is about. I want to go into the mandala. I feel it's time to go into the mandala. So what is the mandala? We can look at it from this point here. This is like an old image that we constructed for convergence that we had. I feel the mandala is the way to hold everything and nothing all at once. So we can go into this bit by bit. I've been waiting for the time we could go into the principles that more or less organizes. Oh, okay, this could be messy. I'm trying to press buttons. This can help to organize the structures. This is so unwieldy. When I do my cursor, it does funny things. 1 to 7 would be principles in inner dance that would maybe guide belief structures. I think it would also be interesting to start to re-enter the colors. So I'm just going to quickly browse through these without going too much into content. A lot of these we have introduced already in the past months. Some of you have only been with us for one wave into the second, the ones who have been in Kundalini activation process and shifting into inner dance. Some of you have been with us for 2 waves coming into the third. So, but most of you, all of you have at least watched the prior videos, so there's some familiarity to these. There are the easier to understand elements in some of these colors. Like here, this is a lot more practical or grounded or concrete, okay? But we haven't really delved into a lot of the philosophical elements that are present within the colors. So for example, in the green, there's hermeneutics as a branch of philosophy or a branch of knowledge. Like in the blue, we haven't really tackled the blue, but the blue is quite important. It's looming, it's up and coming. And the philosophy that comes up in the blue is both structuralism and post-structuralism. So it's not really just about communication or communion. There's something about time and space that comes together in the blue that we would need to enter to clarify what inner dance is philosophically and also scientifically. In the violet, there's epistemology, which is the philosophy of knowledge unto itself. It answers or looks at the question, what is the nature of truth at all? And what does that mean in the energy process? I think today we start with the violet more than anything else. I would love to enter the violet, to re-enter the violet, to look at the structure of what we know through the point in the middle. Okay. I don't know how, I'm not really so prepared. I didn't want to overly prepare. I have a whole bunch of notes. Just a general introduction would be good. And okay, so I guess right now I'm just introducing the rainbow. And wondering what would be like a starting point. So let me see, maybe I go to my iPad now. Okay, let me just make some space from the old. Oh, it's like some kind of delay. All right. So let's look at some general terms that have crept up repetitively over the last months. We're interested in time as we're interested in space. I think what is time is a really general philosophy that helps to hold inner dance so well. And the time in relation to space is really quite good. What I really love about the mandala, which we could signify within a sacred geometrical symbol, one of my names for it, which I pick up from sacred literature, is the key of seven. The key of seven helps to hold everything and nothing all at once. There's simultaneity there that allows us to perceive all of the dimensions that come up. And for me, these dimensions are, you can call them chakras, you can call them belief statements. They could be endocrine systems as well. It could be explained physically, conceptually, mentally, spiritually. Now, when we maybe consider this from like a chakra perspective, 7 colors in the rainbow, 7 sounds in the musical scale, 7 days of the week. It's a sound, image, time. For me, that is very Eastern in a way. It's an Eastern perspective to look at dimensionality in that way. And in the Eastern perspective, this in a way is more spatial. Spatial would be that which does not involve like time so much. Time is more temporal. Spatial, which would be more to do with what is in space, what is spread across space. So in time, one of the things that happens in time is things change so that there would be evolution at work. When you take up Eastern mysticism, Eastern religions, like shamanism in many ways, evolution isn't so much a prominent thing. So let's say in the West, traditions are more evolutionary. In the East, things are more or less like conserved or preserved in time. Like in the cultural sense, things do not really evolve, they stay put. So when you study, let's say, Buddhism especially maybe Buddhism, truth stays put, you know, truth is supposed to be transcendent of time. So no matter when you look at it, it's going to be the same truth. It's going to be about nothing and everything. That when you move into a more Western set of ideas, Western philosophical space, um, things change, things improve. There is actual transformation that takes place. So I guess when the East was westernized, even Buddhism might have undergone like changes over time, but the essence of the East is very much conservative. It's very much into uh, looking at the universal, the transcendent, that which does not really evolve. So obviously, both of these would be interesting. Both time and space would be important to accord. So I think it has been interesting for me to discover the historicity of knowledge, not just spirit systems, like from a Western point of view. So if I was to map out, let's say, for example, like the branches of philosophy in a Western system through the lens of the East, then I find interesting, let's say, bringing ontology as an aspect of the violet, which is really at the bottom, it's somewhere in the middle. uh, Ontology deals with being or existence, you know, it's the philosophy of being. What exists would be the question. And in a sense, that is violet. Epistemology would be in the indigo. So somehow we can move from essence into knowledge. The moment we acknowledge that something exists, something bears an ontology, something is. Let's say an inner dance suddenly is ontologized, or Kundalini becomes ontologized in people's lives. Then we move into wanting to understand, like getting to know that thing that exists, that might not have existed before. Suddenly we become interested. So knowledge becomes thingness. Structuralism is a little bit hard for me to explain why it ends up in the blue. So let me just write them down. At least an inner dance type mapping through the colors. Axiology would be the yellow. Axiology would be the philosophy of ethics and rule and law, or even practice. So that would be very yellow. So a lot of you who spoke about this movement of slowing down from like the, you know, doing sessions that are really motivated, that are really, you know, like dopaminized, very coming from, okay, I need more people, I need to make it big, I need to make it strong. A lot of that is very yellow motivated. So let's say when some of you speak about the slowing down, it could be happening, let's say here in the indigo, like maybe you've done a lot of work in the violet. Now, okay, this is a thing, this is valuable, this exists. So I want to understand, and the indigo takes a lot of slowing down, and the indigo being very much contrasting and complementing the yellow. To move from yellow to indigo definitely would end up with a slowing down process. So this is blue, this is green. Phenomenology in the orange would be philosophy of experience. Like, what is the nature of the phenomenon or the experience, and how does that contribute to truth or meaning making process, either from the subjective or the objective. So that's orange. I think it would be interesting to map out empiricism as an important moment in the Western tradition when we moved into more evidence-based scientific methodology. There's something in the grounding of spirit that moved into the red, where suddenly the external world bore an existence that was separate from the internal consciousness that we hold. Like the world became real in the red in a way that prior to that, in religion or the mythical tradition, maybe the world wasn't as real. So empiricism could get mapped out in the red. We could study that together. In general, and just for now, we are looking at these as evolutionary moments that brought about the evolution of consciousness itself through time. So that rather than just calling it like the red or the root chakra or the crown or the violet chakra or the ajna indigo, that we do go through change, however linear or non-linear, when you go into your process or when your participants go into their process, these might come into play. Like somehow when you awaken an ontological selfhood, maybe a hermeneutic circle starts to happen, like a meeting of the whole in relation to the parts. Maybe that the becoming of space and the becoming time of each other takes place in the blue. And like you become wise, you start to organize your knowledge structure in accordance to what do you know, what do you believe in. So a lot of people are when they enter trainings, they're centered around here. It's pretty much in the yellow, like tell me what to do. Don't really go too deep. Just tell me what to do. Give me instructions. Tell me how to hold the body. From 1 to 10, give me the steps. Very, very easy, sequential, linear way. Don't make me understand anything. Just tell me what to do. That is very, very yellow driven. And a lot of trainings that are focused in yellow, they tend to be quite powerful and simple, and they tend to make a lot of money, and then they can draw in a lot of people. They can bring quite a bit of confidence to those who wear that, but without having an effective epistemology and essential ontology and a possible structuralism and hermeneutics to guide that, then the set of ethics may not actually come from a real uh, philosophical underpinning that would make it really ethical, like in many ways. It could be a lack of epistemology would really have it that we can just make things up as we go along. Like what the guru says is true can be translated into the law or the set of rules, and that can be cultic in many ways. So this for me is well put together in my own mind and in my own body. I had evolved through the years in inner dance, studying both the East and the West, the South and the North. A lot of my own questions had to coordinate with the evolution of the human mind, not just my own mind. So I had to correspond the East and the West together. I think to start out with epistemology, right here. We're here to conduct effective, responsible practice. What needs to come from effective theory, and effective theory stems from essential philosophy. When we try to consider the conditions of truth, truth needs to be coherent, meaning the truth, the knowledge claim that you put out needs to be well put together. The East and West thing is dependent on the correspondence truth condition, meaning what makes the Western tradition powerful is that when someone comes up with a knowledge claim, there has to be a peer-to-peer approach. There has to be enough of a reflexive review process so that when you put something out, it needs to correspond with a lot of the work and truths that others have put out, so that if we all believe that it's true, there is universality that's not competitive and hierarchical. It's not really just something someone thought out after lunch because it just felt right. The context needs to come from code, and coding is the collective consciousness. And then lastly, it needs to be practical. Like, we need to ask if that is to be considered true, does it work? Does it actually work in life? Does it bring about social happiness? Does it heal the earth? Does it sustain the person? That's not just survival, but thriving. Does it, like, help the children? And is it applicable to institutions as well? So this is a discipline that we need to coordinate with, and as such, borrowing from all the colors, philosophically, theoretically, and so on and so forth, would be a good thing in many ways. So starting out with the violet, maybe starting with the philosophy aspect, the ontologization of self and world. Like, what is it? What is it about that anyway? Like, why does that become important? Sorry, I need to just keep switching. Usually I need to leave the shared screen to access my iPad again. Okay, let's start with the violet. And let's stick with the violet without having to go into the other colors today. The violet would be the middle of the mandala. It's the I am, or the we are. So ontology would be bringing something into existence, and ontology would need to apply to everything that you would value.
He's gone. Why you are muted?
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
sorry.
we
How
lost
long
you
did you
for a
guys,
bit. We lost you when
for
you
how long?
started writing ontology.
Okay, so that's not so bad, but yeah, sorry. So I go back to this. So ontology, it's there. So I was asking the question, what do you look like if you were a mind, and if you entered your mind, what would that look like? So this is, let's say, your mind, and your mind is made up of these elements, these bits and pieces, these fragments. Philosophically, these could be concepts, these could be ideas, depending if you were thinking about Plato or Aristotle. An Aristotelian point of view that does travel into modern philosophy is that these are called categories. Categories. Now, okay, I want to substantiate why this is interesting or important. Categories are key. They are your ideas. They are, they make up the elements of the world. It's just that when you go deep enough into the nature of a category, you would just realize how deep any single category goes. There are no such things as shallow categories. Every single idea that you enter would be a universe unto itself. It would be as big as God, literally. Like they would be rabbit holes. And I would just ask you to try it out, like choose any one category and try to think about it or speak about it as long as you can. If you find an endpoint, and just don't do it alone. Like go into the research, read as many books as you can, Google, and see where it leads. Each single category in your mind is universal. It's a universe unto itself. Now, you yourself are a kind of category. And the thing about categories is that there are levels of categories. There are, let's say, basic level categories. This is through the work of Eleanor Roche, who did some really primary work on category that has so many applications in neurology and psychology and the cognitive sciences. There are super ordinate categories. These are higher level categories, and then you have the subordinate categories. This we probably brought up before, but this is the time to really, really discover what is the importance. Why are we bringing these up? Superordinate would be the most general level of categories. So an example would be, say, vehicle, and a type of basic level in your mind would be, let's say, a car. And then a subordinate type of car would be, let's say, a sports car. So this is what your mind looks like. It's that every time you learn a concept, for you to truly get to know the concept, you need to construct dimensions around or inside or above or underneath the concept. You need to construct a kind of structure unto itself. Like you organize the universes as sub and super universes underneath and above. More like this could be like meta category, and then subordinate would be to go inside is to go into the mesa, to go into the small as opposed to go into the big. So this is what you look like. And why this becomes interesting, I think, especially when we enter the orange color or dimension in the mandala, is that when you go into a kind of inner dance process, and when you go into a sort of a phasic light language, multi-dimensional space, something happens to categories. In maybe a casual way of looking at it, the categories actually start to disappear in a way that even you as a category might just go away. You would have all these expressions and feedbacks. I myself have collected these feedbacks where people would say, I don't know where I start and where you begin. Like it's like we become a we. Okay, so one thing that defines a category to make it ontologically an ontology unto itself, a category has clear boundaries. So it's this thing right here. It's the wall. It's the thing that separates you from everyone else. And in your own mind, each idea needs to be bound. It needs to be finite. For that to be an idea, it needs to be separate from all the other ideas. And I don't know how we can maybe imagine what happens in the spiritual process of coming into oneness. Like, do these two ideas start to conjoin come together into the Vesica Piscis, where there's this shared space. Maybe directionally, these two just start to really come together, that all sorts of separation starts to disappear. Oh, that's neat, just in a way. So let's look at the category itself called boundary. Boundary from, let's say, a Wikipedia space. Okay, nothing comes up, but boundary, in terms of, let's say, personal boundary, is particularly like a section. So this is one of the first things that go away when we go into inner dance. Personal boundaries are thinned out. Okay, so let's look at the see also. This is important, the boundaries of the mind. So as your personal boundaries start to thin out, so do the boundaries around your own thought systems. And then you have all these experiences of feeling like suddenly open, super duper open, super vulnerable, super exposed, like, to the world. So then here's where we come in. Like, people who have thin boundaries of the mind start to go into the things that we do. Okay, people with thin boundaries start to find everything to be like everything's connected. It's all happening. It's all one. This is like a very huge feature, probably littering feedback elements in your own work. All right, so let's go to the other one, which should be the symbolic boundaries. Okay. So symbolic boundaries are more cultural in a way, so that, let's say, you identify with a cultural boundary. Maybe, let's say, you're identified with being Black or white or brown or female or male. Somehow symbolic boundaries, boundaries of the mind, and personal boundaries are all bound together, so that in the inner dance process, and this does not need to be permanent, the wait, this one goes away. The border is lost. The border between states, the border between distinctions, the border between stages are lost. And we've spoken enough about the neurology of how that happens, particularly in the this basically is what electricity does. Unleash electricity upon someone, and a kind of regression happens, going back to the original state, the natural state, the baby state, or the caveman woman, indigenous person state. Electricity will bring about a regression, primarily as progression was primarily brought to us by the technology called language unto itself. When we developed or innovated language, which is not just speech, language is a way of organizing your concepts. Basically, this is language. I mean, if you made this a lot more languagey, then there would be maybe a bigger circle where this is made up of. Maybe that's what language looks like. So especially for all of you who have multiple languages in you, maybe this is what your mind looks like all the more. Okay, so I find it to be an interesting phenomenon. Maybe it's still a kind of theory or a sort of argument that we're substantiating phenomenologically through people's experiences, epistemologically through, or maybe empirically by gathering evidence, observing what is happening, that this is initially what happens, okay? This is not the be all and all. This is not the only thing that happens, but this is a tendency. This is part of the design. In the, especially the original inner dance construct. So in that sense, the violet is maybe a first stage. I'm really careful about using the word the. Let's say maybe it won't happen for everyone, but ontologization, which maybe begins with de-ontologization. So let's say there's an idea of the self. The original category, the first category in a child is the self-concept. And from the self-concept, like I am a boy, I am a girl, I am tall, I am small, I am big, I am, then self-esteem, self-knowledge, self-love, self-sustainability would come about from the self-concept. But many people would be arriving at the healing space because they're not happy with the concept of self that had been indoctrinated, maybe colonized or influenced, where this maybe had been influenced by a lot of voices, polysemic, poly, polyvocal set of messages that came from the outside. Let's say, is that thing, and then like all these messages coming from all over the place. We're saying that this is who you need to be. Okay, so thank you, Becca, and who else said it? That maybe shutting off from social media for the moment allows for this de-ontologization period so that I can then reach a re-ontologization of myself in full rainbow, okay? Not just staying as an I am, but then I can, I will, I create, I birth, I sustain, and so on and so forth. So I think this is like the base. So yeah, that's the self, right? And then once you're done with that project, you know who you are. You literally would start rebuilding ideas around like who you now consider as worthy. Now you have a new self-image that you're building, and you're taking your time because actually the self is now the non-self. This is a complex philosophical journey to understand that the who you are not is also who you are. This is maybe the structuralist going into the post-structuralist. This is the heart of deconstruction. You are also who you are not. You are your paradox. You are everything that you trigger, that if you don't run away from it, the true union, the true non-duality would be self is non-self and is then self. If there's none of the fight, if you can build a world around that true nature of self, then that would be quite an ontologization indeed. What you ontologize is then everything that stems from nothing. Okay, so there is a true system in philosophy that does look at how we had gotten to this point. Like where are we now? Like how did we get here? Like to begin with, let's borrow once again from the website. Now for me, these are helpful outlines so that when you yourself are conducting immersions and trainings, it does help to at least outline some of these terms that might eventually come up, even for yourself. So I'm more or less like shopping around, and maybe I would go here as a starting point. Let's go back to Descartes, because he really is such an interesting fellow. Through his process, we are reenacting Descartes. So we could use him symbolically. He is a concept. Cartesianism or Descartism is in many ways the roots of modern philosophy. So let's look at belief structure through Descartes, your own belief structure, the belief structures of others, spiritual others for this context, and everything, everyone else. Now Descartes gave us the cogito ergo sum. He presented, let's say, substantiations for the mind that would present an ontology that would influence then economics, politics, government, maybe even like a religion. A lot of structure started with Descartes. So Descartes started with what's called methodological doubt. So meaning he said, like, instead of trying to look for the answer, what do I believe in? He started with, I don't believe in anything. Okay, so I don't believe anything exists. So he doubted everything. Now, here's where we might be able to contrast what might be happening differently to people who are kind of doubting. Like a lot of people are going through their own what do you call this? Their own uh, their own hyperbolical doubt. But in modernity, it's mostly like a conspiracy theorizing. Like I don't believe in the government. I don't believe in the money system. I don't believe in family. I don't believe in religion. Insofar as that being the dark night of the soul, then they're hoping that they can at least believe in themselves. So that's still a re-ontologization that's maybe going into a very long route. So what did he eventually believe in? Descartes argued for the existence of a perfect God. All right. So if he couldn't believe in the world, he doubted both, let's say, the world, and he doubted also, in a way, the self, because he was, you know, like he needed a starting point, and his self-concept wasn't strong enough, primarily because at that time religion was dominant, but he could at least believe in a perfect God. And this could still be something people are coming from, that God is a concept. God is a category that signifies perfection. And if God does exist, at least like he exists, I can at least ontologize that God exists. And if God is perfect by definition, then God wouldn't deceive us. He would not like trick us. He wouldn't be like the devil who's always deceiving us about the nature of reality. So if he's not going to deceive us, then I can then at least allow myself the belief that I also am a product of God's creativity. So I therefore can at least believe that I exist. But because the methodology began with the process of thinking about existence prior to like this, then I am thinking. He basically came up with this whole method that okay, because I don't believe in anything, at least I can believe in one thing. The one thing I can believe in is God. Then because God probably influences my being and my knowledge, then everything's all fine. I can relax now. I don't have to be in this existentialism, this skepticism. I don't have to stay there. I can start building upon this. Now, when I look at this and when I look at my own journey, when I was in the island and before the island, my question was, okay, this is maybe my own process. Like what was I working on? Like what did I believe in? This was inspired by my own personal journey through my interactions with spirit, with other people, with books. My mind was beginning to ask deep questions, and the answers were very reflexively consistent. Like one of the notions is that we are God. Somehow we are the creative force. Categorically, I was made to really, really look at this. And when I lived alone, I had to substantiate to myself that this is the truth. Um, and alongside this, because I believe that we are the creator, through all these, let's say, books like The Secret and Conversations with God and the Celestine Prophecy and the Four Agreements and so on and so forth, like, okay, so we are God. We can arrive at this conceptually. We would need to embody this eventually, right? So all of these other belief structures would need to follow, like everything is connected. And I wasn't really seeing these as colored before, although I was looking at the mandala already. Like the key of 7 was very, very present in my space. Now, when you believe, especially in this one, something will ensue. There will be a consequence to this. Like when you see the world is interconnected, and then when you do compare that to Descartes did make a distinction in his argumentation that in the nature of reality, he distinguished the mind as opposed to the body, particularly as he was so obsessed with certainty, like looking for what would heal his doubt. He basically made prominent like the mind over the body because he wasn't able to ascertain the truth of the body as much as he was able to see that the mind was a lot more true than the body. Then the mind dominates the body in the dualism of Descartes. Descartes is a dualist in that way. So when someone like Marcia speaks about the need to go back to the body, then you are reversing Descartes. And this is something I as well did. But in consequence of this particular belief structure, what would come up with that is trust. Okay, so for me, then what made my process quite different from the Cartesian process, the Cartesian is Descartesian. Anything related to Descartes is Cartesian. If Descartes had methodological doubt, I had to conduct a methodological trust, meaning either in solitude alone or around people, I had to rebuild the world from this dualism that the mind and the body are separate, and the things of the mind are separate from each other, just as the body are made of separate things. When everything became connected, I had to methodologically rebuild my own mind to become coherent with this belief. And what I later learned more and more and more was that I also had to undergo the transformation, like in the body. Like I couldn't just rethink this, that everything was connected. My own body had to resonate with this belief that everything was connected. I had to embody. It couldn't just be something I thought about like once in a while. It needed to translate. The transformation had to take place. So my goal today, if we were to truly look at the nature of the violet that could extend to the other colors, central thesis, this is inner dance. It's the arrow. I would make the arrow maybe more bidirectional. Inner dance is the movement. It's the transition process. It's the conjoining between all things that are separate from each other. And there is a profound science that, in fact, heals what in Descartes' lack of, he was religious, he had a lot of spirituality, but he lacked enough scientific feedback that was unavailable at that time. Like the science that we hold now, in fact, helps to heal the split. And were we to substantiate that, you would be able to witness and even be part of the co-creation process that allows for a more conscious mind-body connection, like in the process, starting with yourself. Let's say all of these things that you subject your body to, okay, like I'm going to move spaces, or I'm going to become healthier, and so on and so forth. We still wouldn't, let's say, invalidate this particular word, but to make that a lot more objective, we would call them the motor programs or the motor functions of the human. The way we move the body helps to shape the mind. And I'm not just talking about the movement that you're making momentarily, like right now. I'm talking about the long history of movements that had occurred like in your body from the beginning, has helped to shape the mind. This is where science is now at, that our ideas are motorically conditioned. All of our ideas are rooted in how we initially moved our bodies. So if you are to change your mind, let's say, I want to change my mind, you cannot get away from not changing your body. Okay, that is the grand reasoning for why we do this kind of work. We are finding out that the mind and body are directly interlinked with each other. And you can try to read as many self-help books, inspiring videos as you want, without understanding how the body would also need to undergo transformations. Some people might be interested in the anatomy, the chemistry, but what in fact truly mediates mind and body is motion into itself, you know, not just emotion, but motion unto itself plays a huge role in metaphorizing. The word metaphor signifies the borrowing action that takes place between the mind and the body. That the wisdom of the body gets translated into the mechanisms of the mind, and then when the mind expresses itself, then language, okay, language, not just speech, once again, but language, the system of organizing, reorganizing, disorganizing. This looks like your mind, let's say, but in the space between these ideas are your movements, okay? Movements hold potentiality. They hold in them like possible choices, commitments, everyday decisions. It's the space in between the units. It's the things that you can't see that actually formulates who, not just who you were or who you are, but who you are becoming. So we would honor the dance, the inner and the outer dance, as in fact what we need to give back to people, old people and children inclusive. People have lost their ability to dance across the points or the units. There's now structure in the way, like this may connect to this, may connect to that, may connect to this and that. Like we now have like a picture of ourselves. So where we do change that picture, motion, remotion, the motion remotion is primarily important. The the smallest point is in fact the movement between the points. Okay, so I think that could help us bring us into principle. Let's see. I think let's go to the Chrome. It's here. So this is for me the statement in the Violet. That's cool. Don't know why it does that. Resonance is irreducible for one. Okay, resonance is irreducible. These are two concepts put together. Now, all beings are monadic, they're complete and indivisible. You cannot add or subtract from them. Like, what does that mean? Like, how is that a basic vision statement or principle in the inner dance construct? Now, metaphor we would study throughout the 3 months. I really desire to bring more understanding to the magic of metaphor. Metaphor is a system of substitution that allows us to understand one thing through the domain of another. Substitution, you know what is substitution? It's like, okay, maybe I can understand crying through the concept of rain. Now, there are many metaphors that we store like in the body, and a lot of them are held together by primary concepts or image schemas. Now, one of the interesting image schemas or units for metaphor is, for example, the concept of like, it's called the conduit metaphor. Now, another term for the conduit metaphor is the transmission metaphor. Okay, transmission is a concept, but it also holds other concepts in place. Just as much as another metaphor is like resonance. Resonance is a metaphor. Okay. Even let's say the concept mental as opposed to physical, they are also image schemas. They are also primary units that make up a metaphor. A metaphor is usually made up of two units so that things can borrow from each other. So transmission versus resonance would be something to initially bring up. Now, a key principle that I had put out for the Violet is resonance is irreducible. Now, what is the principle of irreducibility? Where does this come from? Why is this holding relevance? Sorry, it's irreducible. Now, I put out the philosophical word like in the Prezi, it's the monad. Now, the monad is the smallest point. We brought this up in previous Zoom calls, but it's good to bring it up now because we can't formulate around the Violet without an understanding of the monad. People think of the nomad The monad would be the most irreducible point in the universe. Now, our Cartesian point of view is anti-monadic. Is Descartes still there? I think so. Descartes. A Cartesian point of view is the universe is not monadic. The prime monad probably would be only one. Like God is the monad, and everything else is not really monadic. So when you think of man, the way Descartes had formulated the human is made up of a whole bunch of different parts. Okay, so you could say Cartesianism is reductionist. It's also materialistic, so that the whole is reducible to a sum of parts. Now, for me, my inner dance philosophy or perspective, when I especially was alone, I was presented with a worldview that the human being is a monad. Now, for you to be monadic means that you are complete. You cannot add or subtract anything. You're actually perfect as you are. You are amazing, you're beautiful, you are wise. I can't I can't make you bigger, I can't make you smaller, I cannot give anything to you, I cannot um I, I can't take anything from you. You know, all these different statements people say, okay, you gave me bad energy, I need energy from my master, my healer. That is not monadic, that's anti-monadic. Um, and that's not definitely coming from the metaphor of resonance. So a monad is that which is irreducible, that which you cannot break down into different parts. So where the monad principle philosophically meets the current scientific worldview is the universe is now thought to be holographic in nature. The universe is a simulation, and this is a paradigm. This is a possible paradigm. This is possibly how you might be able to see the world. Like for you to translate everything is, where is that? For you to translate this somehow, for this to be somehow true, you would need some kind of geometry. You would need some kind of system that helps you to understand how even God and Goddess is actually a substitution for everything else. Like there is a metaphorization happening even on that level. God is maybe a metaphor for the absolute. Then I would want to say Goddess, just so I'm post-structurally not like pushing away the opposite. We account for everything. So the language that we use, the thought structures that we hold, the belief systems that we to hold there, holding the space, need to be very carefully held and understood, and then embodied, so that when we then bring up these other, like let's just borrow this. This is such a big word for many. Transmission as a concept. Okay, now the work of I think Michael Reddy brings a lot of awareness to this. You can research on it. Like he came up with the idea of the conduit metaphor, and he discovered how in language so much of our thoughts are based on this idea that ideas are containers, for example, and that we're channeling or sending messages from the source, or maybe better yet, the sender to the receiver. However much this might be growingly obvious for many of you, I just wish to point out that like the conduit metaphor is maybe possibly the most consistent metaphor in the human mind. That most of how we structured our thoughts is based on the idea of transmission. Okay, now the idea of transmission is very much Cartesian. To be more exact, it would be Newtonian, which is the old understanding of the physical world. The old physics is Newtonian, three-dimensional, reductionist, materialistic. And because when you do consider the, where is that? I'm sorry for confusing you. When you do look at the quantum universe now as it's understood from current science, which is not Newtonian, which is not yeah, it's not based in transmission. The word resonance describes our current understanding. Like if we were up to date, if we were consistent with how science sees the world right now, we would then, if we were to rebuild the world, it would need to be built on a resonance metaphor. I mean, well, what is resonance anyway? Resonance is based on the idea of when you say I resonate, like I feel you, I hear you, I can see, you know, what you, it could be through the scale of empathy, but mostly from science, resonance has to do with synchronization, which is very much the science, the neurology that we are studying the most. Like what does it mean to synchronize multiple brain waves, neural oscillations, like frequencies? So a healer could either transmit or could either resonate. It doesn't have to be a healer. It could be a teacher. It could be a child. It could be anyone else. This needs to be built like from the ground up. And so if we have this understanding that the mind and the body are closely linked together, this needs to be somehow embodied. Like resonance as a metaphor needs to be embodied. And a lot of your sharings earlier are speaking about the transition from transmission to resonance. Like, okay, I need to be more quiet. I need to be less dependent on external messaging. I need to find something that synchronizes all of the things that I've absorbed, sorry, in life over the last years, weeks, months. That's you know, resonating self and the other. And so then I would love to then explore the experiences people are having, like the set of experiences people relate to. Um, let's say in terms of the way people's bodies are moving and the energies people are feeling, the kinds of emotions that are coming into play. Maybe even the kind of music that's emanating from the one producing the music or receiving the music, and the sorts of words that are being expressed by the person, to really just check in as to like, are we seeing what are we seeing here, as opposed to oops, as opposed to like if we were coming from, how do you based there, base, as opposed to what are the types of movements, energies, emotions, feelings, sensations, musics, and words that emanate from the old story, the old story that we've already moved away from scientifically. It's just that through Mike Reddy's work, George Lakoff, Mark Johnson, whose work in embodied cognition is really paving the way for an understanding of the connections between the concepts of the mind and the way the body shapes those concepts according to how we move the body. That could be very, very rich. That could be very, very rich as a work study process for a lot of us, right? So I would start to observe, like, how are you thinking to bring about a reflection? You know, let's say you're in your solitude. When you're in your solitude, what you're saying is, I am now creating a boundary, because this particular boundary is very womb-like. It's pretty much like a birthing process. It's very tomb-like. You're very much like when we mentioned the word grieving. Thank you for Corinne for your sharing. It's like you're saying goodbye as you're saying hello. The boundary allows for the goodbye and hello. It's the womb tomb home. The womb tomb home that's surrounding you in like vibration or sound. That then, like, consciously birthing yourself would require that you are mirroring how you are thinking, how you're speaking, how you're when I think of music, it's how you're vibrating. Is music organized as vibration? How are you vibrating, and so on and so forth. So that's maybe a starting point that's going to be clear enough, explicable enough for people. Right? Were we to study this further, this would be in the coming weeks or months, were we to study the category called metaphor, and maybe you can start researching in this yourself. We can send some links, study material. How does metaphor work inside the brain? Okay, what is a neural theory of learning or knowledge that's borrowing insights from metaphor? Okay, so metaphor is a system of borrowing, as explained. Usually there is a source domain and then a target domain. So in the mind-body conversation, usually the source is the body. So how your body initially experienced, let's say, a concept called lack. Let's say, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy. Let's say a concept of fullness, like I'm beautiful, I'm amazing, I'm wise. The body initially experienced these, and thus the mind would later on, the mind would then translate this into a thought system. Okay, so that's what it means to go back to the body, to reformulate how your body reasons things out, which is very, very nonverbal and nonlinear. The mind would then start to translate that. So let's look at some examples of metaphors that the body holds, like really basic metaphors. So let's say there's a metaphor to do with, let's say, intimacy. Oh wait, sorry. There. Intimacy would be more the, let's take this away. Intimacy would be more to do with the target. So let's say when you're intimate, when you study the words in language that metaphorize intimacy, it would have to do with closeness. Another example that could be quite obvious would be, let's say, quantity is verticality. Okay, so this could be a good example in an inner dance context. More is up. So all of these childhood experiences where you saw something start to rise up. And let's say you're watching a container, and then when the level goes up, then that equates to there being more inside. So linguistically, let's say, if you wanted to, let's say, translate this within like a journey technique, when you play certain frequencies that are directionally going up, as opposed to, let's say, going down, which equates to less. Let's say you wanted to psychologize that as people who have issues on self-worth. Let's say I am small, as opposed to I am amazing. That's already translation work happening there. That this is something the body experiences, and then this is something the mind would translate. So let's say you're working on a concept of abundance, and then in the body, how abundance is usually first experienced is ascendancy, or something rising. Then this is something you can translate, like in music, or it could be like a word. It could be the way you hold the body, or the way you are around the body, or there are certain types of movements that would either be descending or ascending. This is a very, very simple explanation of how the mind and the body are like working with each other. Okay, let's think of other possible examples that would be applicable. Let's say let's think of emotion. Let's say anger. Let's be very specific. Let's go into a subordinate example. Let's say anger is heat. Like when someone says, I'm boiling mad. Okay, boiling is something that the body would experience. Mad or angry is something that is more psychological. So we might maybe accord it to the mind. But to understand, every time you get angry, your heart rate increases, your blood pressure increases, then your core body temperature would definitely go up. So let's say when your blood pressure goes down, and it would be less emotional, because heat is usually a conversion process. It's a transformation process. So the less heat is being generated, the more people are basically stable or stagnant. So here is an example of a metaphorization in which the body and mind are holding each other in place. You can see how the translation took place. And if you are able to translate these through these various mechanisms, that's both mental and physically like charged, here's how you bring more consciousness to the process being held, right? There are like tens of thousands of these metaphors happening between the body and the mind. Like time is money, love is a journey, purpose is destination. Like when you have a goal, you normally translate that as a place you need to go to. Like morality is cleanliness, so that when people say dirty or not clean, in their minds, they're also according that to like moral impurity, or like shame, guilt, or something like that. So there's a lot of possible work here to heal both the mind-body connection. And were we to translate this into a neural mechanism, here's where something like the noise app can come into play, but also other programs that allows you to bridge connections. When you, let's say, when you say you are um, helping to like synchronize thought systems in the body. Let's say let's have an example of a metaphor. Let's say I'm sad. And then maybe another way of saying that through metaphor is I am feeling blue. Okay. They both mean exactly the same thing. It's just that here, this is more embodied because you can perceive this through your eyes. And then here, this is something you feel through your, let's say, your hormones, your autonomic nervous system, your limbic system. And then that translates into like a feeling, which then would translate into a thought. So it begins in the body, then transfers into thought. So what I'm stating here is this is not a good example. Let's go more into, let's say, more is up. So in your brain, up is basically like a domain or a region. And then more is also like a region. So how activation and conditioning takes place is as a child, every time you light up more, and then when you also light up, then that's how you, oops, where did it go? That's how you construct a connection. That's how you construct a, let's say, a synapse. That's how you synapse. That's how you connect, let's say, a neuron or a group of neurons or cell bodies with another group of cell bodies. So for you to then deconstruct or like take away the connection, working with, let's say, paradox, contrast, or contradiction, this is also like how judgments are built. Okay, judgments would be the ways people would associate one thing often with another. So when they see something they don't like, they would judge that this is bad because there's such a connection that was made. So in the beginning, one of the reasons why we would de-ontologize or make people babies is we can deconstruct these connections. We can disconnect. And let's say we wanted to transform that into, let's say, an insight, then we can re-establish connections, but we can then create a more post-structuralist way so that more could also connect to down just as much as up. Then there's this openness to, that's like a new brain state. This is maybe more of a resonant brain state because pure resonance is in the inner dance state still like the slowest all the way to the highest, interconnecting with each other, with everything in between also oscillating. That's pure synchronization, like how we are looking at REM states, neural frequency coupling. That's the true nature of non-duality. Like here's where even the human can interconnect with all species because through resonance, consciousness begins with waves rather than thoughts. And the primary units for metaphorization happens through frequency. Like you can metaphorize delta with gamma, that already paves the way for future beds of information. So you literally can design contrasts in the in what you're holding. So when I'm programming, when I'm conducting playlist program, I would look for contrasts, like opposites to interconnect. You can more easily do that yourself through the noise app, so that you can move from up to down when it feels like it's the time to do it. When it feels like, okay, that's judgmental, that's attached, that's resistant, and so on and so forth. Basically, what I'm trying to say here is that when you trigger a brain part, like a region, because of something that you're holding, it could be something that you said, it could be music that you played, it could be the way you touched people, you will trigger a region. And then when you're using your other hand or other trigger mechanisms, you will trigger another region. And then that will maybe synchronize possible metaphor in the mind-body connection. So you can either stay with that resonance or can move through other resonances depending on what is eventually like your goal. Okay, so I think that's maybe an entry into the violet. There's more there as you might imagine, but I'm hoping that this gives you initially like a wide map for how to start with oneself and then how to move that into like a long-term science spirit approach to studying what are we actually doing to minds and bodies. Let's open the space for insights, ideas, questions, modifications, like compliments to what I've shared. If you're getting like ideas, okay, maybe you can look at this as well, and so on and so forth. Thank you for being here. So just unmute yourself if you have like a violet thought.
Hello. I had a violet thought. This class Pi has been so amazing. Thank you. It made me think about the rigidity of judgments and how it's so solid in our mental connections. For example, more is up, and what openness means, which is breaking old concepts and breaking patterns. So thank you so much. It was a lot of food for thought. It was a banquet for the brain. So I'm gonna take my time to process this, but I had a little light bulb and aha moment. So I just wanted to share this briefly. Thank you.
Actually, like one of the more interesting metaphors is like food is thinking. So when people say like I need to digest that, I need I'm consuming, and how we experience like eating is also how we translate that into the thinking process. So I think we're getting a lot to eat, but also a lot to digest here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Diana, you've got your hand raised.
Yes, hi everyone. Well, I just wanted to share also, as Corinne and several said before, that this summer has been very disintegrating for me too, but at the same time creating. And as I did several inner dance sessions to other people, it turned all the way around. I received more than I gave, and it was incredible. It was amazing. And as you said before, my personal boundaries have become very, 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 very thin, and it almost hurts, but it's a nice experience.
Oh, he lost her. Okay. She's just there. We can wait for her to come back if anyone wants to come in first. Maybe it's her battery or her connection. Who would like to express their violet?
Sorry, do you hear me?
Good. Yeah, you're back.
See, I told you everything is falling apart for me. and I mean, it's very interesting what is happening all this summer. Mainly, I enjoyed. I wanted to be silent, and I was very, very silent. I didn't want to speak much. Didn't want to speak, or move, but I had to move, but something made me stop because I broke my my little finger, and I had to stop. And like I became like a clam, trying to understand many things inside of me, and it was very interesting, very interesting. I share with you my understanding of your last playlist, and it was amazing for me too. Very, um, I understood many things. But well, I think I am still on a long track, because as much as I think I understand, I understand less. Oh, those are my drawings. Like, yes. Yes, those are my comments on your playlist. When you say museums are iconic. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Diana. Yeah, I think one of the big metaphors that we're experiencing in the work. I mean, the work is so multifaceted. It's not just what we're doing together, but I'm sure there's so much that's being conducted. But it's really the metaphor of fullness that's moving or transitioning from the metaphor of emptiness or lack. So there's just so many ways you can translate that, from I don't have enough time, or I don't have enough resources, or I don't have enough energy, I don't have enough support. I think when people start to imbibe, like I'm the source, I'm responsible, I am the creator, then all of these other things would start to avalanche. Because when people say they're being quieter, it also just means I'm less dependent on external sources of feedback, which then would interconnect with all these things about the need for validation from the outside, the need to keep activating the mirror neuron, to copy paste, to not really find one's original thoughts and like feelings. And I think in overall we're painting a resonant field, and it needs to be founded on this idea of fullness, that when you do translate that to where it gets the most obvious is the red. Everything I need is already here, it's inside me. And so the less that I do, the more actually starts to come into play. But we live in a world where the design is exactly the opposite. It's like, no, I need to do more, and then I'll have more. And then I need to I need to acquire, I need to keep collecting things on the outside because I don't already have it inside me to begin with. So these feedbacks are, for me, really quite important. They speak a lot about what's happening inside the body and the belief structure. I think they're both like, okay, thank you. All right. Now it's everyone else's turn.
Hello.
Just go ahead and yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Um, there is like this one word that always made me reflect a lot on the processes and how we see this process or this thing that we do, this inner dance stuff, which was always the word activation. Because as someone that grew inside inner dance, but outside of Europe and outside of the world of Kundalini activation process, or outside of this world, when I went back into the world, into the West after I left Maya, people kept telling me like, I'm going to go and activate myself, or we're gonna do an activation, we're gonna do this. And for us here, I was thinking now, we've always been using the word process to something, even if we are to describe it, we were always, let's have a process, or it's an inner dance process or something. And this was just now clicking also how the words we use to describe this, they will also tell us a lot on what paradigm or which paradigm are we holding. I know we all know now that we are activating things in the brain. We are stimulating things. So there is activity is there. But it's a different type of activity, and it's a different type of action. And one thing that I feel it's really connected to our actions, to our yellow, to how we move in the world, is the idea that we need to do more. We need to go for more, and we're always doing something. But sleep itself, when we're sleeping, we're not actually moving. We're not actually doing so much. So that action, that activity is still there, but it's a completely different one. And this is also something that we are tapping into. We're still doing, and but it's a different doing. It's a different that comes from not doing. It's a different that comes from a state of being and listening in the space. So the entire, also in the word inner dance, we're not using the metaphor or the thing that we describe to that is in our name. It's a dance. And a dance means that there is more than one thing. So you already see, like when we are dancing with someone, you are actually communicating with someone. So there is this imprinted aspect of this there, which is different also from the word activation. That means that there is a source, or that means that one thing, and in the word of transmission as well, that it's going to be from a hierarchical space, or one thing, someone has it and the other doesn't have it, and we need to pass it on. So all of these words, and I try not too much to be like picky with the words all the time, because it can be very picky up into the point that I don't want to speak about it. I don't want to use words to talk about it, because they mean so much, they hold so much, and they will represent spaces and paradigms in consciousness. So facilitating for me has also been this journey, but even facilitating and being in the process, or being someone that is transitioning also from one paradigm to another. It's always been this constant observation of which paradigm am I dealing with right now? Where am I speaking from? Am I speaking from duality? And am I speaking from transmission? Am I seeing the process as something born out of hierarchy, of a conception, or an understanding of power that is oppressive, or a power that it demeans or means different different states inside? So it's always, I feel like facilitation requires a lot of self-reflection into that aspect as well. Like what are we holding? And also understanding that sometimes we can be holding, or we can speak still from duality. We can speak still from Cartesian mechanicist spaces. And when we're there, there's the observation that, oh, okay, this thought might be it must be born out of the box, but not identifying with that box, and not understanding, or that because I am talking from this box, I am a bad person, or I'm a bad facilitator. It's just observing the transition from one box to another circle, or from the circle to the box, and allowing ourselves as well to hold this space of building these worlds together, because we're not changing, or we're not just holding space for people to change their body minds. It's also happening in our bodies as we go. So there's been a lot of self-observation into these words that are used in the space to describe it and to speak about it as well, and even to define it for ourselves. What is happening in our bodies? How is it that I define this? So I had this task with one of my groups lately. They were asking me stuff about Kundalini, and I was like, okay, we need to stop this. I want you to answer me, what is Kundalini for you in your body? How is it that you define it? Because when we see that, when we do that, we can see the words that we are using. We can see where we are speaking from. And then we are able to, from a very hard space, understand that, oh, okay, this maybe is not in this paradigm. This belongs to somewhere else. And how do I bridge? How do we help bridging? Building new concepts, building new movements, and building new actions out of this more bridged space. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it could be really interesting to map out what Kundalini is metaphorically, like consciously, to just put it out there. When you say Kundalini, Kundalini is what exactly? And then that could be a healthy way to like discharge some of the emotions. Just making it explicit might lead to a transformation of the word that doesn't have to accord with Indian tradition if it's really then undergoing a current colonization of the word or a westernization, a globalization of the word, then there wouldn't be the debate. Actually, one of the things I wanted to bring up that is very interesting in the Violet is a particular concept, the chaos concept. It's the anti-concept, and it's by Walter B. Galley. It's called the Essentially Contested Concept. Okay, so this is another entry or category in Wikipedia. It's the concept that's anti-concept. So W.B. Galley introduced it in a really seminal paper to help us understand a lot of ideas such as art, power, social justice. It could be like freedom, love, truth itself. And that there's within the word like a kind of dogmatism or attachment. Like if when I hear that word, that word is what I mean it to be, and all the others who don't understand it are wrong. So let's say if I have to go to it, let me go to my iPad. All right. So an essentially contested concept is a concept that's kind of universally accepted when you hear the word freedom. And I ask you that, do you know what freedom is? And will we agree with that? So you might take it for granted that you know freedom. Let's say you come from the Americas or from certain places in Europe that's able to use that word quite a bit. So, but then you would be wearing a lot of your biases, like your judgment hats. Maybe you come from like a democratic state background, and you could just think of other possible biases. But when someone's not coming from where you are at, let's say someone's coming from a socialist, communist, fascist state, or let's say you are Kim Jong-un or Putin, or let's say Trump or Duterte, or let's say you are Bolsonaro or Hitler. If we were to talk about this word, would it still accord to the same meaning? So essentially contested concepts are basically words that have supposed universal meaning, but because they are so universalized, they're actually contestable, like in many ways, because we think we know what they are. Then these words hold a lot of judgments that are solidified through cultural conditioning. There's always ways to keep stepping backwards to see that we don't actually know a lot of these, primarily because these are abstract knowledge. Okay, they're not concrete, meaning does freedom have a color? Does freedom have a shape? You know, do you know freedom? Is freedom like your next door neighbor? Can you have coffee with freedom? It exists somewhere in the mind. Abstract concepts or knowledge exists in the ocean of ideas, which had initially been influenced by that which is concrete. So for that reason, this is one of the reasons why we go back to the body, to allow the body to re-experience the universe that would lead to other abstracts. But what makes the work of Gali important is we start to understand like the things that we know actually are not known. So one example that's important in the cognitive science is the science or truth in color. Like let's say when you see the color green, is there really like green in the world? Like does green exist outside of the perceiver? And the answer is a big fat no. The green is an interpretation that happens in the visual cortex and the retinal molecule through retinotopy. In the eyes of the perceiver, certain animals don't have the same color range as humans. So like dogs, for example, don't see green. They don't see blue. They don't see indigo. So green is true only to those whose eyes can actually perceive green. Yet, when you ask almost anyone in the world if green exists, they will answer big yes. Why is that universal and not seemingly contestable? It's because we have the same like visual structure. Our eyes, having been on Earth for a really long time through the process of evolution, we share the same what's called system of interpretation. We share the same system of interpretation. So what could apply to green could very much apply to fear, to lack, to love, to freedom, to spiritual awakenings, to kundalinis, to transformation and spirituality, and so on and so forth. The question around critical theory, particularly post-coloniality, gender theory, postmodernism, is who wrote the system of interpretation. Okay, was it the white people who took over Africa or India? Was it the masculine, powerful person who lords over the displaced feminine? Right? Is it the older person as opposed to the younger person? So there is a kind of depression and skepticism happening in the world right now, whereby people don't have a real universal system of interpretation. They don't have reliance in the age of fake news, in the age of really casual ways. People put out so much information today. Everyone can be a publisher, can be a filmmaker, can be an artist, can be like a journalist. They don't need like an institution to back them. They just need a YouTube account. Systems of interpretation are missing right now. And the work that we do is initially removing a lot of the lenses or biases. So we don't know what a thing is. Okay, this brings us into the orange. The philosophy of the orange is phenomenology. And one main technique in phenomenology is bracketing. Bracketing is a technique in how we would suspend our perceptions and judgments of the world around us, allowing us to possibly perceive what is beneath the judgments and the phenomena, what is the essence, what is the core of what we're looking at. That's not just the opposite of metaphor is literal. And judgment is usually coming from judgments are usually coming from the literalization of what we're seeing. So one of the skills that we are learning through the work that we do, it's not really just becoming energy. Like there is a brain transformation happening. The brain the mind, the body is learning to metaphorize, which is to see that what you're looking at is not actually what it is. It just is what it seems to be, but there's something being substituted that is something else. There is something being substituted that is something else. So when we talk about slowing down, this is partially what it means. It's to be in a non-judgmental space, because we are often, the moment upon hearing something or seeing something, we concretize, we collapse the reality to be, that's what it is. But it is not. It is not. It's right now we are coming into a reality where it is what it is not. It is actually what is in the absent presence. It's what is being invoked. That is the opposite of what we think we are wishing for. Life begets death. Birth begets death, and life or sleep begets wake, and so on and so forth. That's the vision of a new reality. So I think everything then is an essentially contested concept. We are experimenting with what belongs outside of each category. And this is what it means maybe to enter into a fourth or fifth dimensional reality, where the library of the mind needs a new sort of system. It needs new dimensionality. And sometimes it's going to look crazy. Sometimes it's going to look like weird, because it's holding opposites and not able to make quick decisions. So yeah, like you will discover many techniques, and I feel the playlisting system, which we will go deeper and deeper into, that's a studio upon which you can carefully artistically hold like oppositions. Okay, thank you, Gra. That really brings up a lot of good things. Okay. Yeah, anyone else would like to share, ask, resonate? Okay, so let's send some people to dreamland. It's probably late, especially in the Americas. Thank you for joining and being good with this particular call schedule. There is another call on Thursday. It will be Thursday night for some of you, so you're welcome to join that as well. It probably will look different. I hope like today was good, and this opens up some interesting explorations for you. So if you can unmute, and we can call it a day and a night. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank
Buenas
you.
noches.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you.
Gracias a todos. Buenas
Mm.
noches.
Buenas noches.
Noches.
Buenas.
Okay.